Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, and my friends, we have a little bit of interesting news just drop on our lap, and that is a hint towards a potential new Versus game. Now, versus which? I guess that's the question. Could it be Capcom versus SNK 3? Could it be Marvel versus Capcom 4? Heck, could it be Tatsunoko versus Capcom 2? Not sure, but let's look at the source of where this all came from. So this comes to us by way of one Brian Hanford, and it states, absolutely pumped for the next hashtag Capcom versus game. New characters, but it could be very familiar. Now, in and of itself, okay, but who's this guy to say anything, right? Well, turns out he has some familiarity with Capcom, as this gentleman actually is the voice of V in Devil May Cry 5. So say if V was to be a character in a Versus game, he'd probably be the guy to voice him, and he probably would know what's up. Now, in case you're wondering just who V is in Devil May Cry 5, well, he's sort of an emo, gothy summoner, for lack of a better term. He actually does very little fighting himself. He summons a variety of demonic creatures, from an evil raven to a big old panther to a giant golem, and he only really gets his hands dirty when it's there for the finishing blow. He does very little combat himself. Now, in a fighting game sense, hey, this is an easy character to make, right? There is a history of summoner-style characters, and he has a lot of that Devil May Cry mobility in terms of dashes, floats, and all that kind of stuff. A very easy and very fun character, honestly, to put in a fighting game. So the question is, what kind of fighting game is it going to be? It's a Versus game, yes, but Marvel vs. Capcom is a very different Versus game than, say, a Capcom vs. SNK. Now, between the two, which is more likely? As much as I would like to say Capcom vs. SNK 3, I gotta say the ball is definitely in the corner of Marvel vs. Capcom 4. Now, as we already know, at the upcoming EVO 2020 event, there will be an 8-man invitational Marvel vs. Capcom 2 tournament. And it being there versus, a more proper tournament, it definitely reads as a marketing event kind of deal, where perhaps something would be announced. And hey, at the end of a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 event at EVO, a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 announcement would be pretty likely. As much as Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite kind of tanked, and for those of you who badmouth the game, shame on you, because it's a really fun game, Disney is now more open to other video game developments and trying to get other games for their IPs and licenses in, and Disney's a big reason why Marvel Infinite kind of tanked in the first place. A lot of the issues of the games were on Disney's end, and now they are seemingly realizing the error of their ways, so perhaps the door to a Marvel vs. Capcom 4 is now much more open than it was before. Who knows at this point, though, because it could literally be anything. Maybe we'll finally get the fabled Capcom vs. Capcom, right? The all-Capcom all-star fighter. Now, as it stands, the gentleman that put this out there, I gotta understand, he probably did that to generate a little bit of buzz. Otherwise, someone at corporate's gonna be screaming at him very soon. But these kind of things tend to be calculated leaks, as that's just how marketing works now in the year of our Lord 2020. That's just how the game is now played, because people love their surprises, and they love little hints and teases. But as it stands, hey, new Versus game, eventually down the road, absolutely, right? It's just a matter of time, in my opinion. Depending on what kind of Versus game it is, not sure yet. But for my money, even though I would love a Capcom vs. SNK 3, for my money, it probably is Marvel vs. Capcom 4. And that's the news as it stands right now. So perhaps we have a Versus game in our future, but we will have to wait for a more official announcement. And hey, EVO 2020, probably a really good place for it. Anyways, my friends, I guess that's the end of this video. So hey, thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well. Go out and play some fighting games.